Kids, today we want to talk about experts. This is a bug that's crawled up my ass a long time ago, and recently I've had some run-ins with different kinds of experts, and I just wanted to express my opinion about experts and how our system truly is broken because of these experts. So let's start at the top. Politicians. Now, I can only speak for the United States, but I'm assuming there's issues in other countries as well. We have these politicians, these suck-ass politicians that lie and buy their way into office, that don't know their ass from a hot rock. Then they get on these committees and subcommittees talking about issues they have no idea what they're talking about. Anyone that spent any length of time watching C-SPAN at all since it came on would know that. I used to, for example, watch a lot of aviation and airline related committee and subcommittee hearings in Washington, D.C., and I was amazed at the ignorance of these people asking these professionals questions, and these professionals trying to water down the answers so that these idiots could try to understand, even though they never did. And then they, the politicians who are the experts, or advised by the experts, make laws that other experts execute. Now, it's mind-boggling. So if you start from the top, you realize how flawed the system already is to begin with. When you have assholes that have no idea what they're talking about, drafting laws for experts to follow, and experts like lawyers, for example, to litigate, it's just a recipe for disaster. And we see it all the time, big ways and little ways. Now, for example, a couple of them that get really personal for me. When anyone, a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, a layman, or any asshole on the street talks about mental illness, or specifically any type of mental illness, without ever having the mental illness and actually experiencing the mental illness, it's insane to me, because you can never really understand unless you've experienced it. The same thing goes for rape. And those two things are like real hot button issues with me. If anybody talks about rape or has an opinion about rape, you had better be raped. And those of us that have been raped, we don't generally like to talk about it. And it really is not a conversation we get comfortable talking about. But if you ask in the right way at the right time, you will get a very blunt and firsthand experience and understanding, at least some sort of understanding of what it's like to be raped, and then the ramifications that go on for decades afterwards, and sometimes an entire lifetime. Now, if you haven't experienced that, you'll never know truly what it's like. So you can't be an expert on rape unless you've been raped. Now, if you've been raped and then you go study rape after the fact, you can be an expert. But there's very few people that have been raped that go study rape, for example. There's very few mentally ill people that go out and study mental illness effectively and then provide any kind of expert opinion on mental illness. Now, I myself have been stuck in this broken system that we took this antiquated, evil system that we had prior to the 80s, which had these huge institutions that just shoved people in like cattle, and it was just as bad as concentration camps, frankly. That's the truth, and that's the history of the United States. It started with poor farms, and they're just like concentration camps, and they were no better. sometimes even worse. Because at least at a concentration camp, you got gassed and then roasted. You didn't have to spend years suffering and being a lab rat for some crazy ass doctor that wants to try a new experiment on you. And since they've drugged you out of your mind, or you're out of your mind, you have no way to resist. So, like I said, that system was broken. They replaced it with nothing. Nothing. They replaced it with nothing. They have a series of small institutions all over the country, which are, they called them the 72-hour institutions, where you can throw anybody in that's crazy and force them to stay there for 72 hours against their will, and then you have to let them go. Now, here's the thing. I've been in those institutions. I've been in a hybrid from old to new back in the 80s, but I've been in the new 72-hour institutions, not against my will. I actually went voluntarily. I actually called and made a reservation, then checked in like it was a hotel because I wasn't feeling well. But these institutions don't provide true mental health care. What they are is a place more like a detox program in case you're on some kind of drug that you shouldn't be on, or they're a tranquilizer farm to get really aggressive people to stop being so aggressive so they can push them back out into society and let them go on their way. That's exactly what they are. I've been there. I've seen it myself. And the experts that run these places have to have simple things pointed out to them all the time. For example, in one of my stays at this supposedly the best facility in the area, black mold on the roof above my bed. Nobody could see that every day? The people that work there, the cleaners, they never saw that? Really? Seriously? The fact that it was so cold you could hang meat and people were were uncomfortably freezing because the air conditioning was just on full blast constantly, summer and winter. And you can only leave people in such cold for so long if you don't provide them with proper clothing. And many of these people didn't have proper clothing, not even socks. And they were supposed to be provided with non-slip socks in case they didn't have any shoes or anything, and they run out of those. So then you turn on the air conditioning and it's like minus 30 inside this, crazy house. And what do you get? You get a bunch of freezing cold, miserable, crazy people that are angry already for being locked up against their will. It's remarkable. And then you have these nurses and other experts that supposedly their only job is to hand out your medication properly, which is supposedly written down on paper and in a computer. So there's a backup fail-safe system, and they manage to screw that up every single day, day after day after day. Now, just because you're a nurse or a doctor or a therapist or whatever doesn't mean you're good at your job. Just because you think you're helping other people or whatever doesn't mean you necessarily are. I met a lot of assholes that are doctors and nurses and therapists that have no business doing what they're doing. They really should be doing something else. I met lawyers in the same capacity. There's a lot of bad lawyers out there. There's a lot of bad massage therapists. There's a lot of bad, all kinds of people doing things that they have no business doing. They should be in some other business. Flight attendants, you name it, go anywhere, you'll find these people all over the globe. An example, I went to 8 different whiskey shops that supposedly specialize only in whiskey. All kinds of whiskey. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles, wall after wall of different kinds and ages and all this stuff. And only one person in the entire United Kingdom, and this was United Kingdom supposedly prepared whiskey, this woman gave me a story about how this one whiskey was actually this other whiskey, but because of two distilleries merging and there was confusion, they changed the name, so this was the new name for that whiskey from sometime in the past. And then I got some, and apparently that's not the case. So then I, stuck with it. And oh well, I mean, if you're looking for a 16-year-old single malt Highland whiskey and you got $125 plus shipping and handling, get a hold of me. I've got 2 bottles to do something with because I'm not a big whiskey drinker. It would take me eons to drink that. Now, but there you go. An expert led me down the wrong path. Now, whether she did it intentionally or not, I have no way of knowing because I don't know her. But her job was to be an expert, and if she didn't know, an expert would say, I just don't know. They just don't make shit up. Right? Now, if you're a nurse, for example, let's say you're a nurse. If you go to work every day and you have to work hard and there's lots of patients and everybody's frustrated because we know the whole system is broken. But then you start resenting certain kinds of people. Are you really being an effective nurse because you resent people? You don't think people can feel that? Do you think that's really comforting? Nurses are supposed to be comforting, not resentful, hateful people that just process things. I mean, you can work at the DMV and be like that because that's what people expect at the DMV. They don't expect that at a hospital or any other kind of medical facility, but yet there's there's thousands, maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of totally burnt out nurses in this country that just have total anger issues and they're just off their trolleys. Same thing with therapists. I've seen dozens of therapists in my life, and these psychologists and counselors and all this kind of stuff, they might go into their profession with an honorable idea, but they also might be going into it to deal with themselves, because I've met plenty of batshit crazy therapists and counselors that just happen to get through the schooling and get the license, but it doesn't mean they're very good at their jobs, and they actually need more therapy than the people that they're seeing. So they use the people that they're seeing as therapists. Now, I personally find it offensive to pay someone to be my therapist, and then I end up having to be theirs. And I've walked away from literally dozens of therapists for just that reason. Or they have this vision in their mind, and they can't see past this literally like a horse. They can't see anything but what this one vision of the world is, and this one size fits all thing, and that's not the way life works, and that's not the way mental illness works, and that's not the way people work. You can't stuff everybody into, I'll use a personal example. I had a therapist that was absolutely obsessed with OCD. He was absolutely obsessed with OCD. Everything could be traced back to OCD. It was like the root of all mental illness. Now, I have schizoaffective disorder with complications, lots of them. And what does being schizophrenic and being bipolar have to do with OCD at all? Nothing. Nothing. But according to this guy, for example, this expert, I wasn't schizophrenic and bipolar, so all these mood swings and hallucinations really weren't happening. I was just having a bad case of OCD, and it was all anxiety driven. It was nuts. It's hard enough to be nuts and try to keep some kind of grasp on reality, but it's even harder when some expert is even farther off the trolley than you are. I've had people promise me things, like they're going to fix certain things in me, and they don't. As a matter of fact, they make them worse. I'll give you another example of a therapist that made me a promise that he was an expert at anxiety disorders, and he was going to get rid of all my anxiety disorders. Okay, great. I don't like having anxiety, so if you can fix it, nifty. Let's talk about it. But then we started to talk, and week after week after week, he wanted me to tell him essentially the story of my life, which I have no problem doing. As I recollect it, I will, I don't hide anything. But every time I told him a story of any significance, he would become horrified and anxiety filled and enraged that this had happened to me. And how could somebody do this? So then we'd spend the rest of the hour watching him have a meltdown because of something that somebody did to me years ago, or months ago, or whatever the time frame was. Now, if you have anxiety and then someone's having a meltdown in front of you, how is that helping my anxiety disorder? Actually, it made it worse. So this is what I'm trying to get at. If you don't suffer from it, or you never had it, then you're not an expert. I don't care how much you go to, how much you study, how much you spend time, what your intention is, or anything. If you're not meant to do something, you're not meant to do something. Period. End of the discussion. I mean, there are some people that are cut out to work at a convenience store. They absolutely shine at it. They're good at with the customers. They're good at keeping the place clean. They're good at keeping the line moving. They're good at at everything, and they just seem to shine. And there's nothing wrong with being good at what you do, regardless of what you get paid or anything. But then you have someone like, I had a foot doctor who just hated people, and he hated Democrats, and he hated Obama, and he hated this, and he hated that, and then you'd spend your whole time in his office hearing about everything he hated. And he hated the whole system that he had to work under, and he hated the insurance companies because they weren't paying him enough. And he hated this, and he hated that, and every time I went and got my feet seen, all I did was hear about the next thing that he hated. And then his receptionist, who's also supposedly a professional, was paranoid of diabetics, who are the most frequent people that go see podiatrists, for example. And she literally cried at me because I had gotten diabetes at a young age, in my 40s, and that she basically told me it's a death sentence, and you're going to suffer horribly, and then you're going to die an agonizing death. And she cried. Now, this is a professional. I just went to get the calluses scraped off my heels, and I have to deal with suddenly feeling cursed with something that is going to just kill me in this horrible way. And there's a seed planted in a mentally ill person with anxiety disorders mind by a professional. Seriously, it happened. I don't make this shit up. I just got cursed out today by a nurse because they made a statement, and I made a generalized statement saying it sounds like the whole system's broke, and they took it personally. It had nothing to do with them. I just made a generalized statement based on the information you just shared. It sounds like everyone, employees and patients, are suffering. And they went on this rant about how they hated this and they hated that, and all these people feel entitled and blah, 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 and just all this bitterness. Now, tell me, is that somebody you want touching you or helping you at a hospital or any kind of medical facility? Someone that thinks you're entitled? Someone that thinks that your health care you don't deserve, or whatever the bullshit is? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Now, I also read a really interesting article today from a high school, somebody I went to high school with, and it was really an interesting read. I have to say, it was really eye opening, and I was left with a lot of impressions about what all these things can go wrong, and some of the things that are just broken in the system in general, because they were very apparent when I read it. For example, I never knew that if you claimed insanity during certain crimes, murder's not one of them, but other crimes, and you claimed insanity, you can be retried over and over every few years, and you keep having to prove that you're insane. That's insane. That is a ridiculous way to treat the mentally ill. If you're insane enough to win an insane argument the first time, why keep beating on the mentally ill? I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you beat on them long enough, are they going to become sane? I don't think so. Usually they get worse. So that's my rant for today. I wanted to share it with everybody because when you look around, and I want people to really look around, find someone or find people all around, no matter what the profession is, that truly are meant to do what they can, or what they're doing, because you can tell it, you can feel it, they radiate it. And then look at all the different people that are doing what they're doing just because it pays well, or because that was the only job they could get, or whatever the reason that they're not doing what they, their calling is. See the ratio of people stuck in jobs and people that really thrive in their calling, and you'll see that it's a huge gap. And sadly, the top of this gap are people stuck in jobs that they really don't belong in, and it goes all the way from the top down to the lowest level. And there's some people that are unemployed that shouldn't be unemployed. They're not good at it. You have to be good at being unemployed. Unemployed is not an easy thing. It's not psychologically easy. It's not physically easy. It's not emotionally easy. It's not socially easy. It's not any kind of easy. Some people are just detached enough to be unemployed. Some people are not. And the fact that you point fingers or you listen to the news media, who's another set of experts that have their heads fully up their ass, they form these opinions for you that are totally without basis for reality. They're just stereotypes. They're just ideas that one person had, and then they got a bunch of people to listen to them, and suddenly it became reality. But in fact, it's not. So keep in mind, think about something unique to you that's happened in your life that unless that person had experienced it, another person had experienced it as you did, they would not understand. Cancer victims, for example. If you've never had cancer, I've been around lots of cancer victims. I've had a lot of my family members die from cancer. But each cancer was unique, each situation was unique, and even though I spent time with them and I talked with them and I hugged them and everything else, I can't imagine what it's like to have cancer because I haven't had cancer yet. Once I have it, I can conceive truly of what it's like. Otherwise, I just have these preconceived notions that have been drilled in my head by the society and the media, and sometimes the cancer patients themselves, and they don't all see it the same way. So what do you do? Where do you go? You really can't have an opinion about cancer unless you've had cancer. Other than it probably sucks, which is just a generalized feeling, but some people don't think it sucks. Some people use it as this epiphany to open up their lives like they never would have unless they had cancer. So some people look at it as a blessing, believe it or not. And so what's right? Does it suck? Is it a blessing? Is it a curse? Is it the end of the world? Is it not the end of the world? Who knows? It depends on that individual person. So anytime an expert tries to shove something down your throat and it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, or it just seems too easy, chances are you're getting smoke blown up your ass by somebody that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Have a good one.